Hi, this is Clay Hines, and you're listening to Pucklandia podcast.
Found by Giroux to center. Ludwig shoots. He scores! Johnny Ludwig does it again!
I'm Johnny Ludwig, and you're listening to the Pucklandia podcast.
Jarvis in close shot. There's a goal. Seth Jarvis, the 17-year-old, short side, glove side, high, just under the crossbar.
I'm Cross Hannes, and you're listening to the Pucklandia podcast.
So cutting to the front of the net, and they score. Reese Newkirk along the right wing just took the pass. That was phenomenal patience from Seth Jarvis and the winner.
This is Nick Chichek, and you're listening to the Pucklandia podcast. Hey, this is Reese Newkirk, and you're listening to the Pucklandia podcast.
Hi, I'm the host of the Portland Winterhawks, and you're listening to Pucklandia podcast.
For those of us attending games 3 and 4, and if you're listening to the show, you likely are, Wednesday night, Thursday night down there in the Glass Palace, may I direct you to my friends at Cartlandia, just north of the rink there in Williams. They do happy hour pricing in the cantina for listeners to this show, in addition to, a pretty good variety of food carts there. It's if you're one that likes to get down to the rink a little early, have a beer before you walk over. It works out pretty good. It's a sweet setup. So, maybe we'll see you down there. Welcome into Pucklandia. Pleased to be joined by Marty Hastings, who's a reporter with Kamloops This Week and also Kamloops Last Week. It's nice to have you on Pucklandia tonight.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I know it's a bit confusing there. Kamloops Last Week, it's kind of a online YouTube, Facebook show through our newspaper, which is Kamloops This Week, and that's my full-time job, but I'm also the weekly sports guy for CBC Radio in Kamloops, so those are kind of the three places where you can find me.
Yeah, well, we always love the newspaper guys on this show and also WHL Unfiltered, and it's also kind of an interesting balance, too, that, a lot of the folks we have on are pretty hockey-focused, but the rest of the news is oftentimes more important than goals and assists, right?
Oh yeah, we got our fingers in a lot of different pies here as well. I mean, for me, like I'm a beat reporter for the newspaper, so it's not just the Blazers. It's everything from Lil and Timmy and Jane's gymnastics to Olympians and then Blazers. So it's a lot going on here out in the tournament capital of Canada.
Well, and obviously the day to day, you've lived it and you've covered, Kamloops for this outlet for some time, but the rest of the country and is focusing more and more on Kamloops as time goes on, and that's kind of where specifically the Blazers, and that's where we are. I mean, they the two games over the weekend. I mean, they certainly look like they're loaded for bear.
Yeah, I mean, especially this year, obviously with the Memorial Cup being here, there's a big focus and a lot more pressure on the team and the organization heading into the season. And with all the moves that they ended up making, I think they set themselves up really well. And you're seeing right now, I mean, kind of the results finally, the fruits are showing, especially I think these first two games against Portland, we're starting to see kind of the full force of the Blazers, which I don't think we've really had a chance to see. I mean, the team had to gel after the deadline. There was some injuries with Demick being out. And once the guys came here in the trade with Everett, with Hofer and Zellweger showing up, I mean, it takes time to figure out where guys are going to fit in and the line combinations. And there was some injuries in the first round. Fraser Minton missed all 4 games of the Vancouver series. Dale and Kiefer missed a game. They come back. So you kind of have this, it's an embarrassment of riches. But I thought it was easy to figure out what to do with them. So I think Game 2 Saturday was probably the best example that they've put forward of what this team can look like when they're firing pretty close to on all cylinders.
Yeah, I felt like, both nights really, the goals that came late in the second period, with the Stankoven goal in Game 2 and the Demick goal, the second Demick goal in Game 1. It seemed like, they always say, the first minute, last minute of a period, those goals are killer, and it just seemed like it seemed like it really kind of cemented the what the Blazers are trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that goal at the end of the second period on Saturday, because it was Portland that's actually shown that tendency to strike quickly after Blazers goals. And Mike Johnson talked about the momentum that they gain off of those types of goals, but Kamloops kind of really ran away with that game in the third period, but that really started at the end of the second period when they scored late. And the crowd, I mean, you get the crowd into it. The Kamloops is scoring first too. I think that's just part of an early, I don't want to call it a death knell, it's too early. But when you get that momentum early and you get the crowd behind you in that barn in Kamloops where it's 5,000 plus, and that just makes it extremely hard to overcome for Portland. And also, the special teams battle. Mike Johnson again talked to me before the series about how important it was going to be. And actually, after Game 1, when I interviewed him, he said, I think the power plays are going to be very important in this series. And I mean, Game 2, Kamloops was deadly on the power play. And I don't think that the Winterhawks can't afford to be that porous on the penalty kill. But I mean, it's hard to blame them. I mean, you're playing against a pretty stacked team, and that is dangerous. I mean, especially when they're playing like they were. I mean, moving the puck like that and getting traffic in front. I mean, I think it was the Bankier goal that comes to mind where Dalen Kiefer was posted up in front, and Spooner's been fine. I mean, I don't really think he's been much to blame. What can you do when you're screened? And just another reason the Blazers have looked pretty good in the first couple games here.
Oh yeah, you mentioned setting the screen. I mean, there's some really nice play in front with the Blazers trying to set traffic on all three of those power play goals. Really, I mean, it's the timing of it's really interesting. It's you think of like a Holmstrom for Detroit or whatever, just kind of lurking in front. Whereas these plays seem like they were really timed to where as soon as the screen was set, here comes the shot from the point.
Yeah, that was a design. And that was pretty bang bang, and Keith was right in front, the shots away, and I mean the goalie didn't catch a sight of that at all. I mean, it was just by him before he knew what was going on. I mean, that's been part of the size that they've put together, and that was it's been massive so far in the first two games, especially that Furster, Demick, Holford line. It's been kind of a man beast line, and I mean, credit to the Winterhawks. They've stood their ground, and with their rock solid, extremely good defensemen, especially their three top D-men have been good. But I mean, there's only so much you can handle. Michael Dick talked about it in the Vancouver series that the Blazers just wore them down. I mean, they come in waves and they don't stop, and eventually you're going to turn the puck over. And when you've got players that are at least 6'3", that line I talked about, I mean, they're all 6'3" or taller. These are big boys that they're playing physical. And eventually, as a D-man, you're kind of sick of that. You're kind of sick of that forecheck, and mistakes happen, or you that draws penalties as well, which we saw. I mean, you start making mistakes, you get tired, you take penalties, that leads to power plays, and they have a deadly power play. So, I mean, yeah, the size has been a big factor as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. That was definitely one thing that really showed on video. I felt that there was a lot of physicality, on both sides, going both ways. I mean, a lot of taking the body every chance that you get, and oftentimes you see that. That the lesser skilled team, the underdog, if you will try to get physical on the more skilled team, but it seems like that almost fuels the fire for this Kamloops team. They're not afraid to play like that at all. Yeah,
they're not going to back down, and I think Portland, to their credit, has shown their toughness as well. I mean, both games have ended with scrums and kind of a half-assed fight. I mean, with Van Oom there, but I mean, there's a lot of mixing it up that's gone on throughout these games. Nobody's backing down. I talked to McCleary after the game on Saturday, and he said, he had a lot. I mean, it's a respectful. There's a lot of respect. I mean, I think with these teams, even McCleary, he was just he was complimentary of of the Blazers, saying it's a tough task. And he was talking about that Demick and Holford line, and respectfully saying they respect them, but they're not going to back down either. They've been fighting back. I just think that they're just a little bit outmatched, and it's hard to combat a team that is so deep. And I mean, Portland is a relatively deep team as well. I just think Kamloops is a little bit deeper.
You talked to the players for quotes, and you weren't getting you're getting a lot of they got a good team over there, and not a lot of Chase Soto quotes from that series.
Yeah, Chase was pretty hot. That was after a game. I had kind of forgot when that happened, and I looked back at that game, and there was some running that was going on, and I think it might have been Jordan DePape or something got hit. And the Blazers didn't like the hit, and Guy Chiron, I think it was Guy at the time, was talking about it. So Soto was pretty hot, and he kind of spoke his mind there in that interview. And I remember after those comments, some of the Blazers tell me after the series, like that made its way to Portland, and the fans were really kind of giving it to them on the bench the next game. But no, there's been nothing like that. Just respect, and a lot of respect for the home ice advantage that Portland does have, and they know it's going to be raucous on Wednesday and Thursday. There's a lot of history with these teams. That's a great old barn, and they're expecting the heat and the hostility, and they're saying they're relishing it too. I mean, Dylan Ernst, I talked to him, and he said, "Bring it on." I love the haters, and that it fuels me to do things I didn't know I could do before. And even young Harrison Brunick and Apo Serrell, the third pair D men, saying, "Yeah, we know we're going to be in for it. We know we're going to hear it, and these fans are going to be loud, and we just got to do our best to not let it get to us."
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. I mean, it's Wednesday, Thursday. Again, Thursday's a little odd. I don't think I've ever been to a Western League game on a Thursday, but so you don't get the potential crowd you might get on the weekend. But I mean, who knows? I mean, the American crowds are usually pretty well respected for getting loud and inspiring people. I know the Winterhawks said that towards the end of, or the last game of the Everett series, that they credited the crowd for helping motivate them. But I mean, you used to hear that with the old Oil Kings and whatnot too, that they love the hostile environment in Portland too. So I'm sure the Blazers are looking forward to that too.
Yeah, I know Owen Zellweger. We had him on our show, and he is obviously knows the American fans well, playing in Everett and playing in that U.S. division. And he kind of suggested that he, maybe some Canadian fans, is what he said, kind of might know the game a little bit better, but that doesn't mean that the American fans aren't just as passionate and loud, if not louder, than some of the Canadian fans. Is kind of what he had said. And I think the Blazers, they know what they want to do, and they want to score first. I mean, they want to quiet that crowd and set the tone early. I think obviously the starts have been key. I mean, they're key always, but especially with these types of home ice advantages. I mean, the Blazers want to go in there and score early and quiet that crowd and build off that.
With Bedard's season coming to an end, it's this whole league kind of really starts and stops with Stankoven, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, he is nominated again in the BC Division nominee for Western League Player of the Year. I think we know where that one's going to go, but I mean, he's had a hell of a season again. And I mean, again, I guess today he was recognized as the Player of the Week for his performance. I know he wants to finish strong. I mean, there's a bad taste in his mouth. I mean, the whole team has talked about it. They're not shy about saying that they regret losing. I mean, to Seattle on home ice in 7 games, and it's been a motivating factor for them this entire season. That's what they want. They're not shy about saying that we want Seattle again. They're not by any means looking past their opponents, and they're respecting, making sure they say they respect Vancouver, they respect Portland, but what they want is the chance to avenge that defeat. And Logan said to me, I mean, he was in tears after that Game 7, talking to me, just saying how he felt like he could have done more. And he later on, I mean, before these playoffs, I think it was, he was saying, I want to leave a legacy here, and part of that is a winning legacy. So they want to get in what they would call the right way to the Memorial Cup, and that's by winning the league. And in order to do that, I mean, I'm not making any massive predictions, but it looks like at this point, I mean, the odds are they're going to have to get through Seattle again to do that.
Yeah, that series is going a little rough for the lower seed as well. I mean, there's a lot of parallels really, between this Kamloops team and that Seattle team, and some scrappy upstarts that are playing against them here. I mean, but if depending on what kind of success the Stankoven can really have here this run. I mean, a kid from local kid. I mean, it's you could really kind of cement a legacy as a Blazer here going forward if the chips fall the way he wants them to.
Yeah, I mean, I think his legacy is already it's cemented. I mean, it's not. I don't think we're going to see anything quite like this again, where we have a Kamloops-born player drafted by the Blazers, CHL Player of the Year. I mean, without Connor Bedard, maybe he wins it twice. He's already won 2 gold medals with Team Canada. Growing up, he was scoring the big winning goals in all the minor hockey tournaments here. To be the captain of your hometown team. But you're right. I mean, the absolute cherry on top would be a league title and Memorial Cup, and I mean, you're in the all-time great conversation. I mean, I think he probably is already, but I don't think it really it can get much better than that. It's the ultimate storybook ending, and that's what he wants, and that's what the people in the city want to see too. And they've put themselves in a position to do it. So I mean, it's an exciting time, and we'll know what happens in the next couple of months here.
I mean, what? You were in the building here the last 2 nights. I mean, this is I've been pitching it more as a league-wide audience, but really this is a Portland show. I mean, what does the Winterhawks need to do to right the ship for Game 3 in your opinion?
I think they got to score first. I think they have to score first. And they got to shut down. I mean, they got to be more disciplined, which is hard to do when you're being outplayed. And they have to when they do go on the PK, they're going to have to peel off those Kamloops power plays. They're probably going to need a standout performance from their goaltender. Yeah, and I think they're top players who have been fine. They have to be exceptional. I mean, Stefan had the hat trick in the first game and was really good. And their D-men with Allsher, McCleary, and Cagnoni, they're going to have to play. Everyone has to play basically their best games. I think in order for that to happen, yeah, like I said, scoring first I think is going to be huge. And just if they can, and what they pride themselves on is they're a momentum team. Like they get one, then next thing you know they're going to have 2, and you're off to the races. The Blazers have done a pretty good job so far, making sure that doesn't happen. That's what Portland's going to want to do. They want to ride that home crowd, and I think that's probably the best recipe is to start well, and just to keep their foot on the gas and try and get a lead and hold the lead. I think that's what they want to do. Just be that momentum team that they pride themselves on, and use their depth to their advantage. Get the matchups they want at home, and try and slow this Blazers team down as much as possible.
Yeah, I have heard Mike Johnson say that it's pretty difficult to line match against this Kamloops team because they are so deep and they're content with rolling 4 lines, which is something that is going to keep guys fresh as time goes on too. So that's going to be tricky. But you talk about the scoring first and momentum. I mean, it just comes right back to where we started with. It seems like the Blazers, at least, in the first 2 games of the series, they're scoring goals at like the right time, just timely goals, which is, almost more important than the actual, quantity of them.
Yeah, I mean, well, you talked about the depth there, and that was the first thing that Mike Johnson said to me is that's the number one thing we're worried about is their depth, because they can roll 4 lines, and you can look at the 4th line, for example. I mean, this is not like the Blazers are not worried about having these guys on the ice. They've actually been extremely impactful in these first couple of rounds with Van Oom and Sador, and now Emmett Finney. I mean, there's a prime example of depth and like just things coming together at the right time where. I mean, he goes on a 15-game point streak. It's a 17-year-old whose development spurt happens right at the end of the season, his big development spurt. I mean, he showed signs of it. They believed in him from the start. I mean, they were talking about him at training camp, but the confidence really started to build, and it carried on at the end of the season, and he has a great first round. Minton comes back into the lineup, so that bumps Finney down, but now he's playing on this fourth line, which is clicking with the Kamloopsian Dylan Sador and Shea Van Ohm. These kind of energy guys that are also, doing a good job defensively and pitching in offensively as well. And I mean, that's the depth that they have. That's their fourth line, and that's Mike Johnston was right, and I think that they just haven't been able to handle it.
Yeah, that's a thing that I know watching the game on video, on my couch. I'm sure it doesn't affect the players the same way, but when I see a Sador wearing that Kamloops jersey, then you're like, and you're already up against it, and you know how good this team is, and then you go down that rabbit hole of thinking all those great, Kamloops greats in the past, with the Darcy Tuckers and the Jerome McGinley's and the Shane Doans and the elder Sador, and you just kind of it's like you're already down a man when you walk into the rink,
Yeah, and I mean there's a lot of history with Portland too now, and I think they're probably going to try and call on that. I mean, it was interesting talking to Chris Murray about some of those battles back in the 90s, and Don Hay was around throughout the 80s when these two teams went at it. Actually, I talked to Sean Clusson today. He played for the Winterhawks back in his junior career. He also coached for Portland, so he remembers some of the battles that they had, and that's all experience that I mean the Blazers have kind of fed off too. I mean, Don Hay more recently coaching for Portland I'm sure he's been able to help his club out, and knowing Mike Johnston so well. But I mean, Mike Johnston knows Hazer so well. So I mean, there's a lot of great history between these teams, and I'd expect Portland. Game 3 is going to be basically their Alamo. I mean, they have to win that game. So I think the Blazers are going to be prepared for Portland's absolute best, and if Portland can squeeze one out in Game 3, we got a series. If they can't, I would suggest at that point it's pretty much all over but the crying. I mean, it's going to be hard if they go down 3-0 against this team. So I think Game 3 is going to be massive.
What do you think they do in goal for Game 3?
That's a good question. I mean, Michael Dick in the Vancouver series tried to switch things up, and it didn't really work. I mean, both of their goaltenders were fine. Do they go to Giannuzzi? I don't know. I think I'd have to go back and look at all the goals for Spooner, but I think that, there's so much shot volume that I don't know if they're upset with his play. I could be wrong. Maybe they go back to the 20-year-old who has been pretty good for them all year. I mean, I think they got options there, and Mike Johnston was pretty firm in saying we think we have two great goaltenders that can play for us in the playoffs. I don't have a feel on that either way. Who they're going to go with.
Yeah, I mean it's a hot topic around here, and always has been. I mean, back to the Matt Carruth days, but it worked pretty good for Saskatoon in the first round, but it didn't seem to give them any sort of lift last night. So I mean, your results may vary, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, like I said in that Vancouver series, it didn't really matter. I mean, and they started with Vikman, and they went to the backup, and they ended up going back to Vikman, who played very well in Game 4. But I mean, if he's facing like 40, 50 shots a night. I don't know. He had in that game, I think he might have had like 50 something. It was 64 shots. I could be out to Leinster. It was a lot of shots. He played very well. I mean, it just didn't matter who you had in net. The Blazers were just too good, too many shots. It didn't matter who was going to be in net.
Well, again, shot volume is one thing when you're trying to look between the 2 and 2 of on the back of Kufler's jersey. I mean, I really want to give him credit for how good a job he was doing screening the goalie on a couple of those goals.
Yeah, Dalen Kiefler, he's a guy that I've been a big fan of. I mean, he's a great story. Very late round Bantam draft pick, and basically picked by Shane Doan, who Kiefler lived with Shane Doan in Arizona. And Dome said, okay, we got to pick this guy. I think I see something in him. And he's just turned himself into an NHL drafted guy with the Islanders, and heart and soul, lunch bucket, will do anything for his team. And he's a guy that he'll be sad. One of those guys that you'll be sad to see him go. He's been a blast to cover in his career, and but yeah, he's been good in this series.
I know we opened with this, but where can we find your work, Marty?
Yeah, so you can find our newspaper online, KamloopsThisWeek.com. You can find me on Twitter, @MarTheReporter, and also I run KTW on Blazers, so @KTW on Blazers on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram, @MarTheReporter. You can find our show, Kamloops Last Week, on YouTube. It's under the umbrella of our newspaper, which is Kamloops This Week. I'm also on CBC Radio, Kamloops. So, I mean, find me on Twitter is probably the easiest way, and @Martha Reporter.
Well, with all those hats you're wearing, I definitely appreciate you taking some time out to give here to Pucklandia, and presumably these playoffs are going to continue on. Maybe I'll bug you again here down the stretch.
Alrighty, sounds good. Thanks for the call.
All right, thanks, Marty.
Yeah, cheers.